Thank you everyone for being here today. I'd like to start by welcoming everyone. And also like to take this opportunity to remind everyone, I expect us all to treat the members of the committee with respect and to accord the same respect to officers and to our guests. Please remember this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. I'm going to begin with apologies for absence. I have apologies received from Councillor Dan Horden, but thank you very much, Councillor Nick McLean, for substituting in his place. Are there any other apologies? Fantastic. The declarations of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have a declaration they'd like to make? Great. So the minutes of the previous meeting are from the 18th of November. Can the panel please confirm that these are true and accurate record of the previous meeting? I see nods. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to begin first with the budget. I'm going to take all reports as read this evening so we can speedily get on to questions. I will group the questions as per the report. So on MTFS, housing and then environment. We're discussing round 2 savings here. So are there any comments that would like to be made? Councillor Alan Brittis.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a very, very quick comment to thank you for inviting us here, to thank all councillors for being here to scrutinise our budget. This is the second round. We've done round 1 already, and I'm delighted that we have one of our young inspectors here as well today, and delighted to be here and to answer your questions. Thank you. I'll hand over to Assad, the Director of Finance.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me address the committee. So, as Councillor Ambriti said, this is the second of 2 scrutiny windows on budget proposals. This is the third of four sessions held so far this month. So we present the update on the MTFS. So you've previously scrutinised over £7 million worth of savings in November. Tonight there's a further £1.3 million in total to discuss, giving a total of £8.3 million. Taking all of this into account, there is still a further budget gap of £1.7 million. I just want to very briefly talk about the provisional local government settlement. So that landed on the 17th of November, sorry, the 17th of December last year, and it's going to be our first multi-year settlement in a decade, running from 2026 through to 2029. There's been lots of changes to the way that the local government settlement is presented because of the fair funding review, reset of business rates, consolidation of grants, and other changes. Fair funding review has resulted in some major changes to local authority grant shares, both positively and negatively. Based on the review, Merton comes out as relatively low needs and high resourced authority, and the settlement does reflect that in our reducing grant over that period. So the settlement includes plans for the fair funding allocation across all local authorities for next year and subsequent years, comprising the revenue support grant, our better care grant, and our baseline funding levels for business rates, as well as wider changes to the business rate system and funding consolidation. So on Fair Funding 2.0, the government states that the Fair Funding Review is to better align funding with need across the country, updating for the first time in decades the formulas that are used to calculate local authorities' needs for services relative to one another, as well as updating assessment of needs and in terms of acting as an equaliser for locally raised taxation. So this report is based on the most up-to-date information up to the publication of the provisional settlement. However, the final budget report to Cabinet in February 2026 will be based on the final local government finance settlement, which is expected to include some major announcements around SEND funding and other changes. We still don't have a date for the final settlement as of yet, and I will update members once we receive that. So the figures included in the report are based on the provisional figures, and early initial analysis of this extremely complex and far-reaching change to the way local government finance is settled for each local authority and how it's calculated and distributed is touched on in the report. This is more complex than previous years, and we will require further analysis up to the final settlement publication. So the figures do remain draft until that lands, and that is expected in the next few weeks. And we're also, as I said, we're awaiting some major treatment around our SEND reform and the treatment of both historical DSG deficits and what's going to happen beyond the end of our statutory override, which expires at the end of 2027, 2028. So we will continue the work on the finance settlement and we will look at the implications over the medium term. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I please open the floor to questions? I'd like to begin with questions on the medium-term financial strategy part. I see Councillor Szczepanski and Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question to Assad. With the MTFS update, even with the additional savings you're considering, there is still a gap. How confident are you that this will be closed before the budget?
Thank you, Councillor. So as I mentioned in my introduction, Chair, there's been a significant amount of savings put forward already, and we have a good track record of putting forward savings that are deliverable and stand up to scrutiny, both internally and in terms of delivery. So I am confident that the remaining amount of 1.74 million will be found, and colleagues, cabinet members and directors are well advanced in terms of that, and that will come forward in the February cabinet.
Thank you, Chair. I believe it's the case, as was done last time, that there was a public consultation on budget priorities, and I wondered whether you could set out the sort of headline response from that consultation for us. And my second question, I suspect, is specifically for the Cabinet Member for Finance, but appreciating that the settlement is provisional, does he feel that it represents a fair settlement for Merton?
Thank you, Councillor. So we will be publishing very soon the results of the consultation. The headlines are residents obviously value safety, value our green parks, and a lot of the responses are on there. We will be publishing very soon a detailed report on that one, which we'll have before Budget Council.
I thank Councillor Fairclough for his questions. So, like other London boroughs, the Merton is working with London councils, which is made up of all local authorities, including his colleagues in Sutton, Kingston and Richmond, and other Conservative local authorities as well. So we're all lobbying through London councils to get as best a deal as possible for us. And the big compliment that we've been paid by the commentary with regard to Merton in particular is that we are well resourced. We are a well run, well resourced, hugely well financed local authority benefiting from that sale of Chas at 186 million. Thank you.
I see Councillor Manley and Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to officers for this huge report. As we know, homelessness and temporary accommodation are really continuing to be one of the biggest pressures on our budget. So what are we doing to mitigate that pressure? Either the officer or the cabinet member could answer that one, maybe.
I see Councillor Judge wants to get in.
I'm grateful to Councillor Manley. It's a massive issue across London in particular and to an extent nationally. It's caused, I think, by far more evictions from private sector rented properties, preeminently from people who can't afford the rent, and with Section 21 notices without merits, without reasons being given, and they will soon stop. They will stop as of May. That doesn't mean the problem will stop, because it's been a very significant increase for us, even though we're one of the lowest problematic boroughs with this issue across London. We have engaged in a comprehensive programme of work led by the Corporate Housing Needs and Delivery Unit. They've been looking at 60 different streams of work across, or 60 different actions across 6 different streams of work, and they've been looking at fewer placements of people in temporary accommodation, more discharges, buying less spot purchase temporary accommodation, which is very expensive, buying cheaper spot purchase temporary accommodation, recovering more housing benefits, and providing more accommodation overall. And already in the last period, it's had success in that we have had more discharges than we've had people going into temporary accommodation, certainly over the December period. And we believe through this program of work and the regular monitoring which is taking place, that this is having success and will continue to have success. We have an update meeting with myself, with the leader of the council and the chief executive on a monthly basis.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Just to add to what Councillor Judge has said, next week at Overview and Scrutiny, there's a more detailed report on this very item of RTA cost reduction plan. So members will be able to scrutinise that in more detail. The other thing to say is, following Cabinet's decision earlier in the year to match some funding that we got from the Ministry of Housing, Local Government and Communities, we've been pursuing an acquisitions programme and acquisitions of property for the purposes of temporary accommodation, and we'll have our first 27 properties in exchange by the end of this financial year. And that's significant not only because then the council is getting some surety of the quality of the stock, which I know members are very concerned about, but it also allows us to charge LHA, what's called Local Housing Allowance 2024 rates, and reclaim that from government, which is higher than we can on some of the spot purchase properties. So it reduces the cost that we're subsidising.
Councillor Henry, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to say thanks to the officers for the report. I just want to find out, how confident are you that the savings highlighted in the report will be delivered? And this could be both of you, either Councillor Alan British or a
I'll kick off and the detail will come from Asad. I'm very confident.
Yeah, so these go through a rigorous process of checking and testing across the department, as well as benchmarking. So they've been through that process, and I'm also confident. We have a very high achievement rate of savings, as I mentioned in my introduction. I think we're at 89% as at period 8 across the council, and we've seen those figures in previous years as well. So confident from my end.
Great. Well, if we don't have any more questions on the MTFS part of the report, can I ask if there are any questions on the housing and sustainable development part of the budget report? Do I see any hands? I see Councillor Fraser and Manley.
Thank you very much, Chair. How will charging for an enhanced planning service for minor application encourage economic growth?
That's both myself and Jeremy could comment on this. It's vital that we have an efficient and effective planning service. We're now given the ability to charge for smaller developments of up to 9 properties, but not people developing their own property. And in the past, in a sense, it's been a lot cheaper for them, but it's meant we've not been able to deliver an efficient planning service because we've been paying for it. And in reality, this means we will deliver a more effective service for up to 9 properties, not owner occupied.
Councillor Manley.
Just to follow up to that, can you confirm that this is enhanced planning service is not going to be mandatory for those with minor applications, please?
Yeah, I can confirm it's not going to be mandatory for minor applications, and this is an optional service that applicants can pay for, and often applicants want to pay more for it to get a quicker decision. So we're confident about this as an income.
Great. Are there any more questions on the housing sustainable development? Councillor Braithwaite.
On building control, I see that it's planned to go to a shared service. Just wondering what progress has been made and who we're doing the shared service with.
It's not necessarily proposing to go into a detailed shared service arrangement, but we do have some crossover with our neighbours over things such as dangerous structures and some of the out of hours services. So it's about enhancing those to drive in some cost savings.
We have no more questions on the housing sustainable development part. Can I please ask for questions on environment and civic pride, please? I see Councillor Wilson, Councillor Saida, and then I'll go to the next round.
Thank you, Chair. On the fees and charges inflationary uplift, we did ask at the last meeting to have more detail in this pack on those, and I'm just conscious that that's not there in the pack. I think specifically just to make members aware across the panel that it says inflationary, but that's a bit misleading because there are actually some increases that are above inflation. For example, resident parking permits are 7%. There's just no way of the panel knowing that unless they've had the time to read the cabinet papers, which doesn't seem right to me, and it should have been included in the original pack. So I just wondered why that didn't happen.
Yeah, so the details are set out in the fees and charges report that went to December's cabinet. It's not necessarily in this pack. I understand the point. The detail in the savings proposal does talk about cost recovery as well. So it's not just about sort of inflationary charges. It's about getting costs where we are subsidising services to that cost recovery level. There's a lot of detail in the fees and charges report that underpin this. So the details in that December cabinet report.
Councillor Saida, please.
Thank you, Chair. Are we aware of other local authorities that are signing up to this new approach to VAT on their leisure services of management contracts? This is for both of them.
I want to thank the councillor for her question. So certainly there are 3 councils that are part and parcel of this scheme, because they're the councils that challenged the HMRC a couple of years ago to make sure that VAT didn't feature in local authority run leisure services and translated them as non-business and would have no impact on competition. So those are Mid Lothian, Mid Ulster and Chelmsford City Council. And I understand from Assad, who's looked this up, that other local authorities include Westminster, Havering and Guildford. Perhaps Assad will explain why there's a saving here in terms of not charging for VAT.
Thank you. So this is based on the challenge from 3 local authorities, as mentioned, essentially around where a local authority has a direct leisure provision, and the ruling in that case allows the local authority not to charge VAT on things like gym memberships and other utilisation of services, but it also allows us to reclaim the input costs of VAT that we've paid out in provision of those services. So, as I said, there's a number of local authorities who've gone on the back of this, and we are going to set that up next year and deliver this over the next 12-18 months.
Sounds great. I saw Councillor Christie hasn't spoken, and then Councillor Fairclough, and I'll go Councillor Braithwaite after.
Thank you. In relation to ECPC 03, the saving about enforcing traffic regulations, I'm just interested in, it talks about the likely increase in the number of enforcement cameras, and that the locations will be determined by traffic surveys. I'm just interested in those surveys, what they're looking for, how they work, and just any more information that we can have about how the locations of those cameras and how those will be determined.
Thank you very much for the questions. I mean, ultimately, this is about improving road safety. So this will work by looking at existing road kind of compliance issues. So, for example, if you've got a no right turn sign, but if we're finding when we're doing these surveys that there's actually quite a lot of drivers who are ignoring that, if that's causing potential road safety issues on that road, this will be one of the ways to help increase help increase the safety on that road. And these surveys will be taking place over the next sort of few weeks and months to identify these locations on the bar that might be kind of hotspot safety issues, and then looking at potential remedies to address that via some of the measures you just mentioned as well.
Councillor Fairclough, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question on fees and charges and also on the cameras. So I don't know if you want me to take those separately or do them both at once.
This is the last. Let's go for it now.
Fine.
Yeah, can I just, sorry, can I just confirm that the question that Councillor Fairclough wants to ask on fees and charges is not referring to the scrutiny of fees and charges at the last round?
Is round 1 or round 2 savings?
You'll recall, Chair, that we asked some questions about the detail and we were told that they were in a future Cabinet report and we would come back. So it is, I haven't asked this question before, so it's not a repeated question.
Yes, I do recall at the last meeting we did promise to go into more detail on this topic, didn't we?
Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I'm quite happy for Councillor Fairclough to proceed with his question, as long as he doesn't then go on to open it all up with a vote of this committee about the fees and charges. But please do proceed with your question.
I don't need as much time as Councillor Alan Britis has made for my question. So the saving has been referred to. The saving that's presented here is actually a sort of net effect of the much more detail in the fees and charges paper that went to Cabinet, and it sort of slightly glosses over what the individual impacts are. Now, the way it's been worked out is that benchmarking has been done on a cost recovery basis to attempt to move a number of services effectively towards the median of what other councils and other equivalent services do. And that's the approach as I understand it. And so my question is, to the extent to which the cost of living crisis has been considered as part of this process, and I don't know if the Cabinet member would care to comment on, in the light of the fact that the cost recovery has been the prime motivation for these set of fees and charges, how cost of living crisis has been considered. And that's my question on that one. My question on the cameras, you asked me to ask it now, is just to confirm that also includes weight limit enforcement. You'll know from correspondence we've had that many of my constituents are concerned about the enforcement of weight limits on residential roads and safety issues caused by HGV. So just to confirm that would be incorporated.
Do you want to take the cameras straight away?
Happy to, yes. So we'll be looking at a range of restrictions that are around the borough. So I believe, I can't be sure because I can't see it, but that'll be one of them. And as you mentioned, we're already exploring kind of on some of those roads and kind of some of the measures there. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously, just to reference back to the question on fees and charges, all the fees and charges have been reviewed in terms of the impact on residents, and say a lot of the fees and charges in this area are across the council. A lot of them are statutory based, so they're not all cost recovery, and they don't all have the impact that we set them in a way that's totally flexible for us. So there's a number of avenues around this. It is statutory. It is about cost recovery to some extent, and phased over a number of years, but there's also some benchmarking as well. So there's a real mix, and they've all been reviewed along the lens of equalities and impacts on residents.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Fairclough for his question with regard to the cost of living element. And so if there is one local authority in South London that has done a lot in addressing the cost of living crisis throughout the country, Merton, and certainly my predecessor, Councillor Billy Christie, has addressed this, and we continue and we will continue to address the cost of living crisis with policies such as our council tax support, and with regard to costs and fees and charges, the word to make sure that we're meeting the cost should be brought in along with making sure we're not subsidising other more people who are taking advantage of a service at the cost of someone who is not taking that service. So we're mindful, and we will always be mindful of the cost of living crisis on our residents.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Sorry to harp back on to fees and charges. Question I have is about what analysis has been done to ensure that by increasing some of these fees and charges that the revenue take will be actually increased. Because I note that in previous years parking charges have been increased, but the revenue has again gone down.
Yeah, so obviously with any forecast of potential impact of increases, all of that is sort of taken into account. What the impact is going to be in terms of forecast income. So that is always considered, as well as everything else we've talked about.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. I see one last question from Councillor Austin, and then I'll wrap up this item of the agenda.
Thanks very much. This is a question probably for Councillor Neveson. Someone, together with Councillor Brittis, who wears the scars of a traffic management scheme from Q2 of last year. Can I just make the point, particularly if a scheme is going to lead to increased penalty charges in new locations, that early engagement with local councillors is really essential to ensure that there is proper communication with the public. So Councillor Brittis and I dealt with, I think, over sort of 450 individual residents' complaints in a small area when this was perhaps not as best handled as possible. So if that is going to be the case, and you are expecting there to be an increased number of penalty charge notices, please do work early on with the councillors in those areas. I know the report says you're going to do traffic services to identify the locations, but I said early engagement with the communities and the councillors on that, I think, is really important. Thank you.
Can I come in on that? So just to be crystal clear, these are not anything new. This is existing restrictions that are in place. There's nothing. We're not proposing any new restrictions anywhere else. And of course, like we would do with a lot of measures we do, we would talk to councillors in there, let them know about changes might make it to the area. But I want to be clear: there's nothing new. No new restrictions that are coming in as part of this. Is all existing things that are already in place that are either that will likely be ones that are not being complied to at the moment.
I see no more questions on this agenda item, so I will move on. Thank you very much, everyone, for all the officers and Council and British for being here for this part. Right. Let's move on to housing associations. I want to first begin by thanking very much the representatives we have who came here. That's James Devonshire, the Regional Director of Housing for Clarion, as well as Jacqueline Thomas from Clarion as well. And I think you might have brought some other members of your team. I also want to thank Anne Waterhouse, the Chief Executive of Wandle. Thank you very much for coming here. We invited L&Q and Moat. They did not respond, so I will certainly be following up on that. Notting Hill Genesis were unable today, but that's great because we have a meeting in March, so we'll hopefully be inviting them in March as well. We're going to take the reports as read. I will invite the representatives, if you want to make some brief comments, please do for a few minutes, but then I'll swiftly move on to questions, and I'll try and group the questions around 5 topics. We have repairs, engagement, voids and lettings, building compliance, and then antisocial behaviour. But perhaps if it becomes more of a type of discussion, free roaming discussion, that's okay. But can I first begin with Clarion? Do you want to begin with a few brief remarks?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. It's a quick introduction. My name's James Devonshire. I'm the Regional Director of Housing for Clarion. I've been in role since July, so I've not met many of you, but it's nice to be here this evening. To my left, I have Amy Wood, who is the Head of Repairs for South London, and Jacqueline Thomas, who I'm sure many of you will know as our Regional Housing Lead for South London as well. So this report provides an update on Clarion Housing's performance across the London Borough of Merton, where Clarion manages over 900 homes. The reporting period for this report is between December 24 and November 25, for which this has been a period of significant change, organisational change, and increased regulatory scrutiny and focus. Following a planned regulatory inspection, Clarion has received a C2 consumer standards grade, an upgraded V1 financial viability rating, and has retained its G1 governance rating. While this confirms compliance, the C2 grade is recognised as a signal that further improvement is required, particularly around consistency of service delivery and resident experience. It is our aim to achieve a C1 reactive upgrade within the next 12 months. The Connect transformation programme is central to addressing these issues. It's a large-scale change programme and aimed at improving accountability, efficiency and customer outcomes. Progress to date includes the introduction of an omni-channel, restructuring across repairs and estate services, and the creation of a damp and mould team. Structural changes within the repairs service concluded in December, providing clear management lines, smaller teams, and dedicated resources for voids, disrepair, and complex cases. Despite this level of change, notes are skipping away from me. Despite this level of change, repairs performance has remained broadly stable. First-time fix rates have improved and are now above target, and new performance measures have shown routine repairs are generally being completed within agreed timescales. Members should note that increases in long-running repairs reflect a deliberate decision to keep jobs open until fully completed, improving transparency, but also exposing historic work in progress. Customer feedback remains an area of concern and is a priority focus for the repair service in 2026. On health and safety, gas compliance stands at 99.8% and electrical compliance at 97.3%, following the introduction of mandatory regulations in November. Non-compliance is primarily linked to access issues, which remain a key risk and continue to be actively managed as we progress. At the end of November, there were 89 open disrepair cases, equivalent to 0.8% of the stock. Whilst relatively low, the majority relate to damp and mould. In response to AWAB's law, Clarion prepared in advance through staff training, revised policies and real-time tracking systems. Since June, there has been 100% attendance for high priority damp and mould cases, with all works delivered by in-house teams. However, no access rates remain high and continue to affect the speed of resolution in some cases. Approximately £8 million has been invested in planned works across Merton over the past 2 years, with further major investment planned. This is intended to address underlying building issues and reduce repeat repairs and disrepair claims over time. So I'm nearly finished. Estate services performance remains strong overall, with most inspections meeting required standards and individual failures addressed directly when identified. Antisocial behaviour demand remains significant within the borough, with 47 new cases in November, which is around a fifth of which were urgent. A small number of complex cases remain open beyond 90 days due to their nature. Complaints remain a key area of challenge. Repairs and damp and mould continue to drive volumes, and complaint response times have not consistently met targets. This is acknowledged openly and is being addressed through the Connect programme, with clearer ownership and additional capacity now in place. Member inquiry response times are showing a positive improving trend. Customer satisfaction has remained broadly stable, with consistently strong repair satisfaction and more variable housing satisfaction, reflecting ongoing issues with consistency of service. In summary, this report does not suggest that all the issues have been resolved. It demonstrates where Clarion has regulatory compliance, improving performance and clear plans in place, alongside an honest recognition of the areas, particularly complaints handling, access and customer experience, that require continued focus and scrutiny. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak, and I hope the published report, together with this introduction, provides you and members of the panel the information that you need.
Thank you. Can I invite Anne as well? Do you want to make a few brief comments?
to say thank you very much for the invite. I'm Anne Waterhouse. I'm the Chief Exec of Wandle Housing Association, and with me is Francis Burrows, who is our Exec Director of Customer and Operational Services, who has his teams providing a lot of the frontline services. Our report that we provided focused on repairs and maintenance. That's what we had been made aware that the session was largely focused on. I note, Chairman, that you referenced also ASB and other areas. So where we haven't provided that information, we'd be very happy to follow up with information should there be specifics on those areas that we haven't provided. I wasn't going to run through what we'd shared. I think hopefully what was clear in there was that recognising the investment we're putting into improving our repairs and maintenance service. Wandle has previously identified a need to improve that service, but I think took short-term measures that hadn't really sustained that. And so the approach that is underway in our transformation programme identifies really it's being driven by the feedback from our residents. And we have a specific resident steering group that are engaged in providing their feedback and also helping us make decisions about the improvements that we're putting in place. So I'll leave it there, but obviously here to answer questions from all members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, can I open the floor to questions then? I will begin with our young inspector, and then I'll go to Councillor Mercer and Councillor Braithwaite.
This on? Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Aziz Omen, one of the young inspectors. In 9.1, you mentioned, this is in relation to antisocial behaviour. You mentioned in engaging with street wardens and in Mitcham Town Centre events. Are you able to just elaborate more on your engagement with young people with that as well, please? Would you like me to rephrase the question? I know it was all over the place.
I think that question relates to Clarion's report.
I'm happy to take that question. So in relation to collaborating with Merton's Warden Service, Clarion has a Warden Service. And so we work collaboratively with the Council's Warden Service. That means that where there are specific projects, and there have been some where there's been a focus on activities in Mitcham Town Centre, there will be joint patrols whereby we will work with the local police to try and address any of those community issues. So that's the collaborative work that we are doing with the London Borough of Merton. So we have very much a joined up approach in the town centres that we are where we actively have a number of homes.
Okay, Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, folks, for preparation of your reports. It was a very, very quick one for Mr. Devonshire. I was grateful for your preliminary remarks. You mentioned the degree of compliance on the electrical installations and the gas installations, and they were superficially nice high numbers of 97% and 99%, but then if you get it wrong, then perhaps that's not such a good number. So I thought perhaps you could tell us to what extent that is a good number, a better number than you might have, or you're aiming to improve.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So compliance, we would always aim for 100%, obviously, across all of our compliance and health and safety measures. That unfortunately is unrealistic because of access issues, etc., etc. Anything in the high 90s for gas safety is acceptable. There are specific numbers within the report as to what number of properties that relates to that hasn't got a valid gas safety inspection. The new regulations for fixed wire tests came in November last year. So we are working on processes at the moment to ensure that we are following a similar non-access route for electrical safety as we do for gas safety inspections as well. So we would hope that within the next few months that number starts to improve for both gas and electric. We're aiming for 100% all the time. I'm sure that would be the same for colleagues sat next to me as well.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. A further one on gas and safety and so on. Does this cover leaseholders as well as tenants?
It doesn't cover leaseholders. Leaseholders are responsible for ensuring that they have a gas safety certificate. Landlords, registered providers are not required to undertake gas safety inspections in leasehold properties. So there's no legal requirement for us to do so.
Right. It just concerns me a bit that when you've got a large block with a few leaseholders in the block and they're not necessarily complying, it leaves you open. So.
And to that publication, comms messages ensuring that leaseholders do seek their own gas safety inspections, we encourage through several channels.
Further one on leaseholders with relation to repairs, because they're responsible for doing their own repairs. But the issue basically is in a block where there's a leaseholder above, and the issue is in the flats below. What process have you got to make sure that the issue in the leaseholder's apartment is fixed so that it doesn't carry on causing issues with the people below? So I've had a couple of instances of that where it's taken an awful long time for something to be done.
So we have a team of repairs resident liaison officers who would support both the leaseholder and the tenant in ensuring that repairs are undertaken as quickly as possible. It's always a challenge when managing cross tenure. I think that's fair to say. So that brings about its own challenges, but we will always aim to support both parties as best we can. I know that in the past we have undertaken repairs that have been caused by our residents to leasehold properties as gestures of goodwill. That's not to say that we will do it all the time. Obviously, there's a fundamental reason as to why we've done that. I don't know if you have anything further to add on that, Amy.
I think we take a pragmatic approach. So if we can get access to a leasehold property and we're there on site and it's a quick fix, it is something that we will do, and it's not our responsibility, but we recognise the sort of bigger impact of that repair not taking place. So we do take quite a pragmatic approach to it if we can get that access.
I see Councillor Manley, and I'll go to Councillor Fairclough. Then Wilson.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for attending. I'm focusing on Clarion with my questions. My inbox, it can be quite depressing some weeks. Some of the complaints I get about things not getting done for tenants, more recently, operatives not turning up to help get rid of rats running around someone's house who has two small children. I find that very, very scary and depressing and quite frankly dangerous. So I want to understand whether you have some kind of urgency rating system whereby, for example, let's talk about rodent infestations, water leaks, lift repairs. Is there some kind of response timing that you have that you guarantee to fulfill? And where is your quality control method in terms of ensuring that when an operative says, I've done a job, then in fact they did turn up and they did do the job, so that the person waiting for the operative hasn't got to keep contacting you to say, where are they? It really is quite depressing, frankly. And then secondly, we did have an incident at Gedge Court in London Road not too long ago where there was no water in one of the parts of the block for, I think it was Friday through to Monday. And I just want to understand what involvement Clarion had in terms of why it happened, what they did over the weekend to try and sort it out for the residents, and why I had to engage my my MP's parliamentary assistant to actually help you get this sorted out.
Thank you. So in terms of the general repairs issues, and I'll talk specifically about repairs and not pests or lifts because that's not my department per se. With sort of the quality control and the making sure we attend, we prioritize repairs in an emergency, so a 24-hour attendance, or a routine, which is a 28-day attendance. We've also recently changed the way that we report our KPIs. So we report on the average of routine repairs first attended within SLA, so that 28 days, of which we're running about 85%. And then we also report on our number of aged cases, so those over 90 days, so that we can sort of track the exceptions to those. So I think that there's sort of, I agree that there's quite a difference between the 24 hours and the 28 days, and there is a prioritization in terms of the hazard work that is through the AWAB's law, where we've got the 27 hazards, and they will have the initial 24-hour attendance and the 5-day sort of plan in place. All of our contact centre staff are trained to provide the soonest appointment, and they will triage on the onus of it being an emergency if we can't find anything sooner. In terms of then the quality control piece, we've just been through quite a significant period of change, and one of the pieces of change is introducing a team leader level, and that team leader level, we're directly responsible for the operatives that are on sites doing those repairs. That should, over the next few months, as they get embedded into those roles, provide much more ownership and oversight of those repairs taking place. We also have other things in place, post-inspection processes, which are in the process of formalising, and I think it'd be really nice for us to come back and present the data on that when we've got that process up and running. We have tracker reports to make sure that they're there on site. We cross-reference those against the repairs timelines. We have photos and notes that we expect on every single job, and we'll do a dip test on those. So I think we've got a lot of measures that we can put in place to check that the things that we're saying are happening and that should happen. Unfortunately, with the numbers of repairs that we do process on a monthly basis, things do slip through the net, and I think those are the ones that we need to target to make sure that we've got the right compliance. So where we get this robust post-inspection process put in place and it's auditable, we can focus on the types of repairs that do often slip through the net to make sure that our quality is better.
I saw Councillor Fairclough next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everybody for coming along on your reports. I've got a query for Wandle, or actually feedback in some regards. I had to deal with a member's inquiry through Wandle to support a resident of mine, and being bluntly honest, it was quite painful from my perspective to deal with the Wandle members inquiries email address, and I just wondered if you might have any. It was some time ago, but if you might have some comments about how you deal with and support queries from elected members, whether that's MPs or councillors.
Thank you for the feedback, and it's a process that we have been looking at as well. So that's, we've had similar feedback from some others as well around that in terms of timescales and the level of detail as well. So we have put in place a whole new complaints team who are supporting through the members' inquiry process as well. So the recent performance has improved quite significantly. We've been adhering to the timescales on those, but also supporting the team to actually do better investigations to provide much more comprehensive responses. So I hope you'll see an improvement for the next time, that it'll be less painful as well, and you'll get the information that you need. We've also certainly sort of significantly increased the resource we're putting into those, so that you will find a much more timely response now.
I saw Councillor Saida, and then I'll go to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to, it's great to have you guys, and I've obviously met James and Jacqueline, so and you've always been very supportive. Unfortunately, if I start with positive and negative, unfortunately, we've Hatfield Mead, our largest estate on our ward in St Helier. Last year, it was a big thing was that they had to take down the extra doors that they had created on their balcony due to fire hazards. And a lot of the residents really uncomfortable because that was an extra security from people coming into the communal door and them having that extra protection. But they've had to take that down, and the communal doors are all open. Most of them are open, don't function. So what's happening is they're victims of antisocial behavior. It's having an impact on their health because some youngsters are coming and smoking weed right in front of their window. So I know we have been liaising, and you have come back saying that the doors with the contractor and they're delaying. Even Enye got him back to me today. But if that's a delay from last summer, my concern is can't you go to another contractor, because the impact it's having on these residents, they're intimidated, their health, and it's we feel bad constantly hammering you guys, and it's, you know what I mean. So, and we know that you've tried, but my thing is, if that contractor's not doing their job, maybe it's time to move on to another contractor.
Thank you. I'm fully aware of the case. I think, yes, there have been challenges. The reasons for the delays because there's been a change in contractor, and we changed our preferred contractor who delivers on our doors, our reinforced doors, and there was a delay, and that contributed to the delay. And we now have a new contractor who is now progressing it. We did give the instruction to the new contractor for this particular case, and we're nearly there, but we absolutely take on board. But that delay was because we were in the process of procuring a new contractor, right, and that's why there was the delay. But as you said, Councillor, there's been a considerable amount of work working with the local college, trying to address the antisocial behaviour at Hatfield Mead, and we are confident once we have the doors in place that that issue will be addressed, along with the future project meetings that are in place, and working with the college, who have been very, very supportive in trying to address those issues at that particular estate.
Can I just jump in there and ask, on the point of security doors, often security doors not getting fixed can then lead to a myriad of other issues. Is it seen as an urgent repair, and is it seen as something that shouldn't take 7 months to fix?
Absolutely, it should not take more than 7 months. Sometimes there are some complexities with the doors, and making sure that we can get them repaired and that they are fit for purpose. In some instances, we are replacing the doors and putting in new doors that we believe are fit for purpose to address the antisocial behaviour issues. And sometimes some of the delays are that we are making that decision as to whether we should actually repair it or actually replace it with new doors. So that sometimes can lead to some of the delays.
Yeah. Did you want to come in on security doors? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. My questions are for Clarion, because they're mainly in my ward. Just need a bit of context around some of the points in the report. So the Locals app, I remember we've had some data on that before. And I think you say that you're below target. So this is the instant feedback on repairs. But I think when we were previously told about it, it was a low number of people actually filling out or completing the app. So just understanding what that context is there, and also how it relates to customer satisfaction scores, which seem to be a lot higher. So I just want to know what the relationship is between those two things. Second, so I've got 3 questions, Chair, is that okay? Second question is on voids key to key. Again, in the report you say the voids figures are broadly static, but the key to key ones aren't. So just any comments on that. And then finally, on the proactive engagement visits, which seems a really positive thing, but you don't give any context around how many you actually have on your books to do. You just say how many you've done. So I don't know what percentage are you kind of achieving, essentially. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the first two. So the locales text messaging is all repairs have the opportunity, so it's on demand and at the resident's discretion to provide us with that feedback. So for November, as an example, we completed a little over 1,600 repairs, and we received 275 responses, so about 16%. For November, and the sample, as you said, was 17% negative. In comparison to January, where we've had so far 14% negative across 268 responses, so again about sort of 13-14%. In comparison then to the customer satisfaction, that's completed by an independent company who sample about 10% of all repairs across the month. And that's for the whole of South London. And they ask different questions. So there's quite a broad range of subjects that they'll ask questions on and ask sort of some context, whereas the on the way locales is a really short, sharp sort of text message service. So it's fewer questions that are asked.
Go ahead.
It just, I guess, based on their fairly low percentages, are you going to continue with it? Do you think there's a better way of gauging customer satisfaction and feedback on repairs?
Absolutely. So yes, we will continue with it. All feedback is good feedback. We are looking at how that locales is provided and whether there are other versions of the same sort of technology. That's very much in the discovery phase at the moment. Oh, key to key. Sorry, there was a second one. I always forget the second one. Key to key times. Let me find my numbers. Sorry. So with our void program, we've gone through a program called Housing People Quicker. It was an initiative to try and reduce the overall numbers of voids that we have in WIP. And we were doing that on a basis of a void coming in and us turning it around as quickly as possible. It didn't quite have the desired effect. So we've reverted that now, and we're on a WIP project to reduce the overall WIP. We're using contractors at the moment, which is having a negative impact on the key to key time, where we're servicing some of the older voids that are in that WIP, so that we're hoping for the end of this financial year to be in a much reduced position and servicing them as they come in and not having any of the aged voids sat there. Thank you.
There was just the final one on the which I've now forgotten what it was. Proactive engagement.
Okay, yeah, I like these follow-ups. Go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't a follow-up. It was in my original question. Sorry, on the proactive engagement.
Yeah, so the proactive engagement. So it is just an ongoing rolling. We don't have a target as such. It's just if a resident doesn't contact us within over a 12-month period, we will make an attempt to proactively go and engage with that resident, check on any vulnerabilities, ensure their safety, check on condition of property, etc. So there's no target as such. It is just a proactive approach that we're taking. We hope to get round everybody as quickly as possible. 32,000 units in South London alone is a challenge. But we're making steady progress, and we hope to continue to build on that as we go through.
Can I just pick up on that? So these are proactive door knocking sessions, and do you do them for the entire estate at a time, but only for targeted when you haven't heard from certain residents over a 12-month period?
It is door knocking, it's phone calls, it's by whatever means possible to try and engage and contact the resident. And it would be targeted approach. So we wouldn't necessarily go out on an estate and do it across that estate on a particular day. It would be, if we've not received contact from a particular resident for a period of time, we would then make an effort to contact them and check in on them, essentially.
Can I check if Wandle has a similar initiative where you proactively check in your residents?
Yeah, so we've started a program of tenancy visits. Again, in the same vein, where we've had a lack of contact from a particular resident, where there's known vulnerabilities or issues, or where we've not had we've not been able to get access for a gas check or an electrical check around that. So those get prioritised for those tenancy visits, where the housing officer will attend and they will meet with a resident and go through their tenancy, any particular issues that we need to know about, ensuring we've got the right records around vulnerabilities. So again, it's a targeted approach to start off with, but that's going to be rolled out so that we will then have those regular checks for all tenants going forwards is the aim.
Right, so these are all targeted initiatives rather than a general estate-wide proactive door knock. I saw some more questions over here on this side. Can I think Councillor Manley mouthed something about not having her last question.
Yeah,
properly
my
addressed.
question about go to court wasn't answered, if I may. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor, I'm happy to take that question. Yes, there was indeed an issue on the that weekend, the 17th of January. I think the issue was it was far more complex because we didn't fully understand exactly what had happened. We knew that the fire brigade had attended the block, and we weren't very clear as to how the water supply was feeding in, and we did make the assumption that there was still water there when in fact there was not water, because there was still water in the tanks. Although residents were still getting water, the water was going to run out over a period of time, and there was an issue with the delivery of water for residents because they were without water. So we've learned a lot through that, being very clear on the communication to residents as to when we are delivering water, where is that water to be placed, so that residents have access to it. And what we have done is we've recently written to residents to actually go through exactly what had happened. Where we did not respond as we should, we have apologised, and we've set out exactly what we'll be doing going forward in order to address that. But we've learned a number of lessons in keeping residents updated in relation to that incident.
I'm grateful to you for your response, but I'm still curious. If we know that the fire for people came and attended, surely there should have been a bit more sort of logical thinking that if they'd done something, then clearly that's where the source of the problem was. But my real concern is that if for 4 days I've got elderly residents with no water, which presumably meant they couldn't flush toilets or wash themselves, what was the response that they were able to get, if any, at that weekend from your emergency department? Because 4 days without being able to use your loo properly and you're elderly, I can't even comprehend how that works.
I can answer one point, is that I think one of the issues was there was water there. We failed to communicate effectively with the residents as to where the water was on that particular estate. So as soon as we knew that there was an issue, we made sure that there was a provision of water. I think the lessons learned is making sure that residents knew exactly where it was so they could access it. That was one. Taking the water directly to residents, which was what we probably should have done, as opposed to leaving it in a communal area. And that's one of the lessons that we've learned through this whole incident that happened over that weekend.
I saw your young inspector had a question. Can I ask them, bring them in, please?
Hi, thank you. This is just a follow-up from the previous question. Also expanding on what other people have said. You mentioned working with a nearby college. Are you able to expand on what work has been done, and was this part of the collaboration? And do you think this work is enough?
Happy to take that question. The work that was done was, as was previously highlighted, there were a number of reports of antisocial behaviour, where it was alleged that the students from the college were actually going on to Hatfield Mead and causing ASB. We felt that the best way of trying to address that was engaging with the college, trying to understand what support we could offer to the students at the college in order to encourage them not to attend Hatfield Mead, but to attend elsewhere if they wanted to meet up, as opposed to meeting at Hatfield Mead. So that's the work we were doing. The college have been very receptive to that. We've been working and considering options to our Clarion Futures programme, and Clarion have been trying to see how we can actually engage with the students so that Hatfield Mead is not seen as the place to congregate, but there are other areas. As previously said today by the councillor, we are trying to ensure that the doors are far more secure. So it's it's more difficult to get into the block, but also the work we're doing with the college so that the students can see that the Hatfield Bude is part of the community and it's not a place to go and congregate, but there are other things that we can do and other activities through Clarion Futures and other programs.
Thank you for that. Is it possible if we can have maybe like a little report on what work is being doing with young people? I think I would like to look at that more closely.
Yeah, sure, we can definitely do that. We do quite a lot of work through our Clarion Futures team in relation to young people, and yeah, we'll be more than happy to provide that information.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I saw Councillor Henry and Councillor Fraser. I'll bring them in as well, please.
Chair, thank you for your report, and this is for Clarion. I just want to ask a few questions, which I think I'll be able to get some answers. I am one of the tenant champions in Merton, and what I noticed when residents do your tenants, report issue or concern that they may have, it takes a very long time, maybe 2 or 3 months, or maybe a couple of weeks before it has been addressed. And for instance, if I report it, it happens very quickly. And this is not right because I shouldn't be stepping in that sense. I mean, it's your tenants, receiving their rent, and they should be looked after. That's very concerning for me. The next one is what I want to find out. Do you have a garden scheme? Because we have many elderly people who live in some of your properties and the gardens are disgusting. We need something to be done. I know last year Jackie do help. When I took her around for a walk around, she was able to get things done very quickly because they were in such a bad state. But we need this continuously. It's not just one and off or one off, we may call it. But please, because you're the largest housing association that we have so far, so we need to see you doing the work that our tenants, our residents, are paying for. Thank you.
I can probably take the first question around response times for residents and how they differ. There isn't an intention that we serve yourselves or members any sooner. I think it is just sheer volume that is a factor. The Connect program that we're currently working through at the moment, the whole ethos and idea of that is to better serve customers. So that means putting frontline staff on the ground, that they know their local area, they know who the residents are and what their vulnerabilities are, and how they can best serve and assist them. For housing and neighbourhoods, that's going to roll out over the next 12 to 18 months. So from my perspective, I would fully expect to see improvements in response times for customers going forward. And as you said, the member inquiries process that we do have is very quick. Response times for South London are around 8 days to yourselves. That doesn't mean that the repair is completed within 8 days or that the response is provided, that the action's undertaken within 8 days. That response is given to you, but it may be that a repair is carried out a week later, 2 weeks later within our urgency priority list, for example. In terms of the garden support, is that probably going to hand over to Jackie, but it may be something that Clarion Futures support with potentially.
I'm happy to take that question, Councillor. We do have a gardening scheme, but it's a scheme whereby residents can contribute to if residents would like their gardens to be maintained, because we fully appreciate and understand that there are some residents who are unable to maintain their gardens, and when that happens, there can be resulting issues and complaints from adjoining neighbours. So we do offer that service where there is a contribution that can be made. But I think there is, we have got also Clarion Futures, which are a charitable part of the organisation, who can also see what additional support can be provided to particularly our more vulnerable residents who may not be able to purchase that service.
Councillor Fraser, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Wandle. I'm from Longthornton Road, and I've been there and a councillor for 15 years. We have very few Wandle houses, but the few actually give me a headache, because when we talk to the people who come sometimes, they are really lovely, but they never carry out what they're supposed to do. And I don't want to actually name them out here, but I'd prefer to talk to one of you about it. And it's only two weeks ago that the same lady who's been telling me over the years, and I've been to see the place, it hasn't been done, and she lives on her own. And so I just wonder what your work is for. On the Rowan site, I've had similar situations, and I just don't know why we're not doing anything. So I really don't want to make it a public thing, but we can talk about it and then find out what sort of structure should we have? Should we listen to them and find out what's there? And they're actually not massive things, but they're day-to-day things that they need. And so I just hope we can work together. Thank you.
So thank you for letting us know about that. And it'd be good to have a conversation outside of the meeting to understand, again, to get the details of those particular people and those properties, and then we can work out what we can do afterwards. But yes, very happy to have that discussion.
Can I quickly ask a question of Wandle as well, and then I'll go to Councillor Manley. I note in your performance metrics, your target for satisfaction repairs is 53%. It seems quite a low target that only 1 in 2 residents should be satisfied with their repairs. Could you explain the justification for that, please?
So we're going through quite a significant transformation of our repair service at the moment. So historically, performance hasn't been where you've needed it to be and where residents should rightfully expect it to be as well. So the target is set so that it's something that can be a stretch for us for this year, but also achievable, while we're also implementing a range of much more significant actions as well. So we're about to put in place a whole new job management system, a new end-to-end process, retraining operatives, reinducting all of them, and putting in place a whole range of other additional metrics to improve that. So it will be a slow process to do all of these different things, but what we want to do is deliver sustainable change so that year on year we'll see that satisfaction score constantly increasing and embedding that, rather than trying to do a whole range of things right now that then become undone because they aren't embedded changes around that. So there is a lot that's happening at the moment, and actually the satisfaction score for this year is slightly higher than the target as well. So it's good to be able to report we've achieved that. Next year, we'll also be able to see some more significant increases as well. So the aspiration is very much there. We're putting all of those plans in place at the moment, but we are starting from a lower place than we would want to.
What would you like the target to be once this program of change is over?
So that's it. So the way we've set it to start off with, by the end of our 3-year corporate plan, is to get to the London median. And then once we've got past that point, we'll then want to go towards the national median and keep improving from there.
So am I right? Is that your ambition is to only be as good as a median housing association, and there isn't an ambition to lead the pack and improve your services for your residents?
That's certainly a point we want to get to, but to start off with, we want to get to each of those particular milestones, and then we can work through about that. I don't want to say we want to be the leader, whereas at the moment we're further behind from the London median. So it's about how we can incrementally keep making those improvements, and then we can get to that point.
Councillor Manley, I think you wanted to come in.
Thank you. It reminded me, because we have an election this year, that it was a year before I was elected that I had Wandle on a site meeting. We have 7 adjoined houses in my ward, and we had to get our MP, Siobhan McDonald, to come down and have a site meeting between Wandle, who own a certain piece of land and a wall, and a neighbouring church. And it's now 5 years, and I've been waiting for this job to be finished, and Wandle don't seem particularly interested in finishing the job. And what's sort of quite amusing but also depressing is that a wall that belonged to Wandle was taken down by the church but it was agreed between the church and Wandle that a temporary fence will be put up, which indeed Wandle did. And that temporary fence, 5 years later, is now also tumbling down. And I'd really like this resolved. The agreements were made, but Wandle just aren't following through. And we email and we email, and I guess it's just not as important as a repair to the house. And given what you've said about your aims with repairs to houses, can I expect a result? I don't know. But I'd like to be able to write to you personally and find out what's going on.
Please do send me the details and that's it, we'll be able to respond to you in full.
Can I please bring in Councillor Austin? I'm really sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's a context to or the preface to my question. I have two questions. Was that in September we had a pretty sober evening with representatives from various housing associations, certainly including Clarion, which reiterate in slightly more graphic detail what your report covers in statistics and analysis. But I mean, across your report, it's clear that complaint resolution times are consistently exceeding targets. So I have a question about the two performance metrics that were launched in April 2025. I appreciate it's not the end of their year, but I wondered if you could comment a little bit about them, what you're learning from them. And secondly to that, and actually Councillor Fraser's request demonstrates this point about how as councillors we're often finding ourselves getting involved in resolving residents' cases. And I made the point at the meeting in September. We are all invited, as you know, because the invitations come from you, to go on site visits. Often those site visits are in the middle of the working day, which makes it very difficult for many of us to be able to attend them. And this was brought home to me. I represent a village ward where a resident would not attend the site visit unless I was able to go with them because of the bad experience they had in the past. And I'm just wondering, partly for councillors, but also potentially for residents, maybe having a bit of variety in the timings of those site visits, whether that be earlier evenings. It's not always in the working day, because for many of us that just simply doesn't work with our other commitments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pick up the first on the performance metrics from April. So what we found was that we were getting feedback about the KPIs that we were reporting previously in terms of the percentage of routine repairs completed in SLA. Not meaningless, but they lacked context. So the decision was made that we would move to a repairs first attempted within SLA to give some sort of more meaning alongside the average days to complete against target, and then the number of overdue complaints to just provide, sorry, not complaints, repairs, to provide a little bit more context of what that data actually means. And it is really driving operationally a reduction in the number of overdue repairs. So there's a real focus with the operational teams in resolving those. We have also made the decision to make sure that all of those repairs are kept open until full completion. Of course, some do slip through the net, but by and large, we are keeping it from inspection right through to closure on that same work order number, which means that residents can follow that repair journey much more closely. But it also opens us up to scrutiny in terms of those repairs that do take some more time than the 28 days to resolve. But I think it's pushing positive and open performance. Thank you.
I'll pick up on the second point around more convenient meeting times. For us, I think it's an issue of resourcing, but also scheduling. So to put it into context, on some of our estates or some of our areas, a housing officer may be managing 1,000+ units. So to find the time for them to go about their day job and then to facilitate evening meetings or sort of walkabouts as well is a challenge. It's not to say that we can't do it, and it's something that we will take away and look into, and the chairman and I have had discussions about this as well. So I'll take your feedback on board. We'll see if we can do it. Part of the Connect programme is to see how we can be more visible on estates, and hopefully from that we will then be able to facilitate meetings later in the day that yourselves as members can attend, but also residents can attend as well.
Can I also put that to one door? Do you also do site inspections, and do you do them only during working hours, or do you occasionally vary them so that you meet a different cohort of residents, and perhaps councillors could also get involved?
So at the moment, it's quite variable depending on what the need is within each location that we've got. So we've got, and we're wanting to do more estate walkabouts and involve residents, councillors, that thing, and other partners as a part of those. So as we start to roll that out, very happy to test out different times of day to see what works best as well. Because the same issue for a number of residents where they say they want to turn up and they want to attend those, but it can't work during the working day. So most of the residents' meetings that we have tend to be in the evening, so we usually start those at around 6:30. So some of those are online, some of those are in person as well. So it's certainly an approach we'll test out more.
Do I have any more questions? Councillor Fraser and then Councillor Braithwaite.
This isn't a question. This is just going with the forces. There's something called teams that some people, never mind what age they are, they can go online, and so you have a meeting and discuss whatever, and then if it needs to be on the ground, then you do that, because we're all doing all sort of hours. And so we can't be up all night, all day, and everywhere, whether it's you or us. And we actually, most of us, work extra to this type of work. And this even takes more time. And so we need to look at different ways of doing things, and most other people are doing them. Thank you.
Can I build on Councillor Fraser's question, actually, in terms of the proactive initiative? Because as Councillor Fraser was pointing out, some people are not online. And I know of these site inspections, it's often an inspection of the communal areas. But is there not an argument that perhaps if you went door knocking, because that's what we all do. I'm sure all of us sitting around here go and speak to our residents regularly, and you learn a lot more about the types of issues which might not be immediately apparent if you didn't have that conversation. So is there any scope for there to be proactive door knocking sessions of the entire estate rather than just targeted interventions from two residents that you haven't heard from in 12 months?
I can, from Wandle's perspective, it's something we'd like to do more of as well. So we're looking at our housing model at the moment and how can we make sure we're getting the best use of the resource that we've got. So we're obviously significantly smaller than Clarion. That's the thing. We've got, let's say, 7,500 homes across the whole organisation. So we don't have any large estates, so we tend to have blocks. We've got lots of street properties, so it's a different kind of approach that we need to take around that. But one of the things that we're very committed to is how do we provide more support to our residents, and we need to understand them better. So everything that we can do to get to know them better and to build that connection and build that trust is going to be an important thing. So it's certainly very much in the plan to do a lot more of the door knocking and regular contact with people.
And from Clarion's perspective, again, I echo what colleagues have said for us, but I think it comes back to that Connect programme for us and reducing those patch sizes, making officers more visible for residents, making them easily contactable. We've introduced the resident champions on Eastfields Estate as a pilot scheme, which is detailed in the report. We are currently assessing how that's working, and we will look to roll that out to other areas, both large and small, in the future, again as part of that Connect programme, but again as part of our ongoing commitment to ensure that our services best meet our customers' needs.
Okay, I hear positive noises. Great, thank you very much. Councillor Braithwaite.
Just a bit more specific question for Clarion. There was one block that it's taken about 2 years to fix a bit of the roof so that the leaseholder's ceiling's not getting wet all the time. And scaffolding was put up, it was repaired. 1 year later, the other half of the building, there's the same issue, scaffolding put up again, and that bit of roof repaired. Would it not have been a bit more proactive to do the whole lot at the same time and save you money?
Absolutely. We've introduced a new process within the repairs team where we facilitate drone surveys a lot more frequently now to make sure that we are looking at the whole of the roof before we erect scaffolding and start doing sort of singular repairs. So absolutely on board with the suggestion, and it is in flight. Thank you.
Do I see any more questions? Nope. Then I'm willing to move on to comments and recommendations. And I think I'd like to suggest one based on our conversations earlier about whether we can call on Clarion and on Wandle to introduce proactive door knocking sessions. So at least once a year across its portfolio, so that they can actively check in with residents to see if there are any issues coming up. Is this something which the panel might be minded to support? Do I have someone to second this recommendation? I have Councillor Henry. Great. So we have a vote on this recommendation. All in favour, please raise their hand. Great. Any abstentions? Or anyone saying no? Great. So we'll take that away. Are there any other comments or recommendations that the panel would like to make? Great. Well, thank you guys very much for coming over and participating of our meeting. Oh, yes, go ahead. Yes, we've got it written down as an action. Thank you very much. We're going to move on with the next part of our meeting. So I'm going to look, the next part is the action log. I'm going to take this as read. Do we have any questions? Nope. Fantastic. And then the work program. Are there any specific questions or points of interest the panel would like the reports to be framed around? Any specific data or trends that you'd like to be included? And I'll also check, does the panel agree that all the housing associations that were unable to make it today, I'm thinking about L&Q, Notting Hill Genesis and Moat, extend the invite for them to appear in March as well, so they don't miss out on this opportunity? Do I take that as agreed? Great, fantastic. Any other comments on the work programme? Councillor Fairclough?
Thank you, Chair. It's more a question, really. There's no performance monitoring in this agenda. Was that a deliberate choice?
Yes, that was a deliberate choice, and it will come to the next meeting in March, and there's a very good reason as to why it couldn't happen this way, which which I'm unable to speak candidly about, if that's okay. Councillor Austin.
This is obviously not for the next meeting, unless it's all to hand, which I don't think it will be. Councillor Sheila and I were at the Armed Forces Working Group, and I was quite struck. I brought this up at CYP, so I'm only bringing it up here for consistency, by one, the scale of our veterans community in the borough. I think we heard it was we had the largest number of veterans of any local authority in the UK, including the largest veterans housing estate. My question is more on our collection and integration of data of service connected families, because what we found in CYP, we were talking about exclusions from schools, and actually there wasn't really data maturity to understand whether or not they were children connected to service families. I think with many thousands of veterans, it may well be a factor. I don't quite, it's not a sort of concrete suggestion, but I would be interested as part of a future work programme across the sort of SUSCOMS brief to bring in that perspective to ensure we are discharging our responsibilities under the Armed Forces Covenant, to ensure that Armed Forces service-connected families are not being disadvantaged, and that will relate specifically to the housing point. Thank you.
So is that perhaps something that would be worth bringing up at the work programme at the next municipal year? Great. Do I have any other comments on the work programme? Fantastic. Well, then I want to thank everyone for attending, and I'm formally closing this meeting. Thank you very much.